one of the questions that had been lingering about Deshaun Watson and his contract with the Browns, very simple. $230 million fully guaranteed for 5 years. Well, the problem is he's facing a suspension at some point, this year or next year, presumably, for the incidents he was involved with, allegedly whatever, in Houston. So if you're suspended under the personal conduct policy, the standard contract language, basically it does two things. Number one, it puts you in a position where you have to pay back signing bonus money applicable to the games that you missed because of the suspension. Secondly, it voids your guarantees moving forward if you're suspended under the conduct policy. So right after this was done 3 Fridays ago, I reached out to somebody who would know what was going on. I said, hey, is there language in here to protect Deshaun Watson's guarantees against a suspension? And the response was, of course there is. We would be crazy not to have ensured that there would be language like that in there. Okay, fine. A week later, though, 2 weeks ago, when they introduced Deshaun Watson, Andrew Berry, the GM of the team, was asked the question, is there language in there that would affect the guarantees if there's a suspension? And he said that there is typical protections in there for the club. Typical protections, which would mean if he is suspended, the guarantees go away, which makes the $230 million in guarantees meaningless. You could wipe them out, and you don't have to keep him. If for some reason he's not very good or there's some other incident or whatever, you're not required to pay him every penny of $230 million. So I finally got the contract. And what the contract contains is the standard language. At the bottom of every paragraph, where it has the standard default language, it basically carves out matters covered by the contents of a letter containing disclosures provided to the team. Now, there's no copy of the letter attached to the contract, but the letter, I'm told, is fair to assume that it includes the 22 plaintiffs who have sued him for sexual misconduct during massage therapy sessions. So they've carved out these 22 cases. So if he is suspended this year or next year, if it's 2024, he still is subject to the default and the guarantee void. But 2022 or 2023, any suspension arising from the things contained in that letter, i.e. the 22 lawsuits, his guarantees are still in full force and effect. And that's not surprising because otherwise the guarantees are meaningless. But it's odd that the Browns would have told us something 2 weeks ago that isn't true. It's not standard club protection. Well, yeah, I don't know. Because there's no reason to claim that you've got standard. It makes no sense because we all expect this guy to get suspended. So It makes no sense to have standard club protection and tout this contract as $230 million fully guaranteed if you've got the standard protection to wipe out the guarantees. And it's not standard protection. There's an exception to it. And I don't know why they didn't feel comfortable admitting that. That's not some major strategic secret that somehow compromises the Browns. And the truth was going to come out. Somebody was going to get that contract and see that it isn't typical club protection.
Yes, but I mean, are you surprised by this at all? I mean, it just, to me, it's like, well, the Browns said that they were comfortable acquiring Deshaun Watson, even though that there are still 22 active cases, right? I mean, all the teams started pursuing him after it was clear he was not going to be indicted, at least the first time, in Texas with those 9 cases. And then obviously we got the other grand jury coming back with no indictment in a different county in Texas as well. So from my perspective, here's the way I understand it, right? The Browns said they were comfortable with Deshaun Watson, and they constructed a contract that makes it clear that they were comfortable with what we know publicly and some other things that they probably know privately about these 22 cases. But if something else comes up, if there is another shoe to drop, then they are protected in the sense that all of those guarantees could be voided. Do I have that right?
Yes. And that's why the ruling from earlier this week that Deshaun Watson must answer questions in the confines of the 22 pending cases regarding consensual sexual encounters he had with any of the 18 massage therapists who came forward last year with statements of support. That may be why they so strenuously objected. That may be why they are very sensitive about it. And I mentioned earlier this week, I got a phone call the other night. Somebody wasn't very happy with me because I kind of agreed with the reasoning from the judge. If there's evidence that Deshaun Watson has been getting massages and they've been turning sexual, that would be relevant to his state of mind when he goes to get a massage, that he thinks it's going to be a massage plus, which would explain some of the behaviors that the women are complaining about, where he's trying to turn things in that direction accidentally at first and then not accidentally after that. But
didn't we already, so before you move on, didn't we already know that from his own attorney saying that some of the, massage therapy sessions turned into consensual sexual encounters?
It's one thing for Rusty Hardin to admit it at a press conference. It's another thing for Deshaun Watson to be asked to admit it individually as it relates to these 18 people. And it could be, Myles, and we don't have that letter that was sent by Watson to Brown with the disclosures. But if the letter is restricted to the 22 individuals, let's just play this out. Okay. Let's say that he eventually admits that for each of the 18 individuals who came forward with statements of support, every single one of them, it was a massage that turned sexual. Every single one of them. Okay. What if the NFL then says, this guy's got a problem. This guy is a serial seeker of prostitution under the guise of a massage. And he requires intervention. He requires a suspension. A lot of the reasoning that was articulated to Ben Roethlisberger in 2010. And even if he's not suspended at all on the 22 cases, or if it's two separate suspensions, if the NFL says you're getting 5 games, and I'm just pulling a number out of the air, 5 games for the 22 individuals who sued you, 5 games for your admitted habit of getting massages that turned sexual with people who didn't sue you, if one of those other 18 get pulled into this and they aren't disclosed in that letter, that potentially puts his guarantees at risk and potentially puts signing bonus money at risk and changes everything. And it only matters if the Browns don't get what they think they're getting by way of the player. But right. I guarantee you, if they get a player less than what they think they're getting, they're not going to turn their nose up at an opportunity to pull the plug on the balance of his contract if they can do it.
Well, right, exactly. But any team would do that. That's the way this thing works in the NFL. With any player, the team is going to keep the player until they feel like, the player doesn't work well enough, player doesn't play well enough, and they can get rid of them. Like that. That's just the way that this works.
But they owe him $230 million. That's why they're looking. Right. That's why I'm not saying they're looking for a way out. My point is, this language could give them a way out. Yes. We're on the same page.
Exactly. Yes. So I think it makes sense. Because you have to have some sort of protection somewhere, that if something like this comes up again, or there is some other off-the-field issue with Deshaun Watson, the Browns could move on, and they wouldn't necessarily owe him the balance of whatever is left on the $230 million. I think from an organizational standpoint, it certainly makes sense.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.